to Unpacking Japan. I'm Toby, and today across of me I have John. John, thank you very much for coming. You came all the way from Ibaraki. You're originally from Canada, and today you're working as a prefectural, on a prefectural council of Ibaraki Prefecture as a politician. And before that, you were elected as well in Tsukuba City. But that's not all you've done so far. There's a long history before that. So could you introduce yourself a little bit more and how you got here and why Japan and why politics?
Okay. I come from Canada originally, from the province of Saskatchewan. I spent most of my time in Canada in a small town called Wymark. It's actually technically not a town, it's a hamlet.
Okay.
Population of about 170 people. Come from a big family, 11 brothers and sisters. Well, 10 brothers and sisters, 11 kids. My father was a minister from the Mennonite religion, not very common. Mother was a housewife. When I was 17, I went on a student exchange to Germany, and that experience kind of opened up my eyes that I really wanted to travel. When I graduated from high school, I worked for a couple of years, earned some money, went back to Germany so that I could actually learn German properly. And then it was time to go to university. So I went back to Canada for University of Regina. Studied music education, mostly opera is what I studied.
Oh, we heard you sing a little bit just before we started recording. Yeah, you've got a good voice.
I love karaoke. And then the reason I was going to university was so that I could get a teaching degree, because I kind of figured that one of the best ways to travel would be to teach. So initially I was not looking to come to Japan. I was kind of looking all over, and I hadn't even thought of Japan. My roommate at the time got a book, and it was a bunch of advertisements from all around the world for teaching opportunities. And you know, all of the requirements for legitimate schools required 5 years of experience, and I just didn't want to bother. But there were places in China, Korea, and Japan where you just needed a degree of some kind, and you could teach. So I talked to a bunch of people, and they all more or less steered me towards Japan, because this was in 1991.
Okay.
And this was like the top of the economic bubble, they call it. And the
right
salaries were incredible when I came. Like I wouldn't even get out of bed for less than 6,000 yen an hour.
Wow.
That was what it was like.
It's more down to the...
maybe 3,000, 4,000 would be a pretty good job these days. So I started teaching English, but I found that I wasn't learning Japanese so much. And this kind of was a disappointment, because I spent some time in Germany, learned German, spent some time in France, learned French. So I kind of realized that I needed to get out of the teaching business. So looked around and I thought, well, in the city of Tsukuba where I was living, a lot of foreigners, why not open up a bar? So I opened up a
from teaching to
bar
owner.
Yeah. Well, cool. My opportunities at the time really, I didn't have computer programming or something like that, or art, or some other skill which would get me into a company per se, or a research institute. And so the reality is that if I wasn't going to teach, I had to do something that didn't require some kind of special education. And I saw a need. There were lots of foreigners, opened up the place, business boomed, did really well. But then they changed the drunk driving laws, and the city of Tsukuba, where I was living, basically when I opened up my bar, if you didn't have a parking lot, you didn't have a bar. I mean, everybody drove drunk all the time.
So these are times long gone now.
Long gone. This was late 90s, actually. And then in the early 2000s, they changed the law. Initially, it was a fine of 50,000 yen and lose your license for a month.
Oh, okay.
That was, so basically nobody cared. And more importantly, the police just never checked. Like you had two big pushes, 1 week in Oban in summer in August, and then 1 week just before Christmas. So this was like the Bonenkai season.
Yeah, it's similar in Europe, I guess, where they're
Right.
more strict around holidays, or
Right.
specific events, because they know people will have a
Yeah.
high temptation to
Right.
drive drunk.
So when they changed the law, they initially changed it to a 1,000,000 yen fine and lose your license for a year. And like within 2 or 3 years, they changed that to 2,000,000 yen and lose your license for 2 years. But more importantly, they started checking all the time. So I had cop cars around my bar every day for 2 years solid. And it's just like, yeah, my business went down 70% overnight, like year on year from July 1st when they started to the next July 1st, 70% decrease in sales.
Yeah, people stay home, drink at home.
And, people change their habits. So in the end, I had a really big bar and no customers. So how long can a guy last? So I said, okay, screw that. Gave up the bar, and I had 3 kids at the time and owed a lot of money to the bank. So my wife and I, we scrambled and we came out okay, like in the end. But I mean, there were times when they shut off the power. We had no electricity.
That's rough.
So that was bad. And when it comes time for Christmas and you're like wrapping up
Yeah, because
blocks
Tsukuba
of
also
wood.
gets quite cold, huh?
Well, anyway, you're wrapping up blocks of wood for your kids' presents. That was pretty brutal. But in the end, I opened up a company and I was selling products to researchers. So Tsukuba's main economic income would be from research. So we have 50 plus national institutes and another 150 private
research
institutes. Yeah, plus a pretty decent university. And so we have a lot of foreigners. And at the time you had these guys, the sales guys, they didn't speak any English. And so, I just started telling people, yeah, I'll buy whatever you want, And so the system is that whatever they wanted, I would go and get for them. And then I would charge 20% above my costs. And, there were situations where people could see on the internet that their item in the United States would be like $1,000. And the Japanese companies were charging 600,000 yen.
Yeah.
Right. And so like I was charging $1,200,
They still save a lot.
Yeah. Just so actually I was undercutting the competition reasonably well. So yeah, kind of how I got into that business. I did that for a while, and then I was doing rewriting. So these Japanese researchers, they have to publish, and they have to publish in English. So many of them, their English is good, but what would happen is that they would send in their documents, their publications, and the peer reviewers wouldn't even read it. They just say, get this.
It's not native
get this
enough.
native checked, And so in the meantime, somebody else was working on the same idea, and they would publish first. And because the Japanese guy lost like a couple of weeks or a month from the time that they submitted their draft to the time that they actually got it published. And in many cases, the publications would just say, no, this is too late,
And that's bad for the researcher, but also for universities and funding.
Sure,
and
for everybody, And so then I started doing this as well. In the meantime, I was whining and complaining to anybody who would listen about how troublesome, shall we say, the police were and how they were killing the nightlife, which was true.
But at the time, you weren't owning the bar anymore.
At that time, I would already stopped the bar, And I just remember, saying things like, if I had half a brain, I would run for politics myself. And a friend said, well, you do have half a brain. So, yeah, you should try. So I did.
But yeah. So this is basically how you went through many stages to get to be interested into politics. But to do that in Japan, you need to be a Japanese citizen, right?
Yes.
You cannot do this on a foreign passport.
That was the first hurdle.
So you've become a Japanese citizen.
I am
You're
indeed a
naturalized.
Japanese citizen, yes.
How does that work in Japan? Can you tell us a bit about the process?
So at the time, you had to either have Japanese blood of some sort, like going back to grandparents is okay, or be married to a Japanese national. And so, married to a Japanese, of course, that wasn't such a big issue. You had to be in Japan for 5 years. You had to have no connection to the Yakuza. You had to have a clean police record. Had to pay all your taxes. Had to show that you had an income. These kinds of things. And most importantly, you had to promise to give up your previous citizenship.
I think it's still, from what I researched a little bit, it's quite similar to what the conditions are still today.
So these days, the conditions have changed a little bit.
Okay, so they adapted a little bit to a more modern era?
They just made it a little bit easier. So nowadays, you only have to have lived in Japan for 3 years if you're married to a Japanese national, 5 years if you're not. And there's no requirement anymore for you to have some connection to, you don't need the blood anymore.
Okay.
Right. So, you get 2 years knocked off if you are married to a Japanese citizen, but, it's not a requirement anymore.
So you went through that process, you applied. Are there any exams you need to go through, or do they just basically look at your application?
You have to do all kinds of paperwork. There's a big questionnaire. You have to write an essay about why you want to become Japanese in Japanese.
But that could be, technically speaking, written by someone that speaks Japanese for you, right?
Oh, no, I would never do that.
Yeah. Nobody wouldn't.
Nobody would do that.
I see. So once you're through, you get the Japanese passport.
Right.
You're officially a Japanese citizen. And then that suddenly grants you what kind of new rights?
So the right to vote would be one, and the right to come back to Japan. And this really became apparent during the COVID pandemic, that people who had their permanent residency, I know of one girl, for example, she went to visit her parents in Jamaica in March. And while she was in Jamaica, they closed the border. This was 2020 in March. And then suddenly she couldn't come back, even though she had permanent residence. She lived here for 14 years. All her stuff was here. And all of a sudden it's
can't
come back, right? Whereas the Japanese nationals, they could all come back, So that was, I guess, a wake up call for a lot of people, I assume.
And that also, besides the right to vote, then grants you the right to actually join the political landscape here in Japan.
If you can vote, you can become a politician. So they're kind of together, I guess.
So you started off from this idea of, I could be a politician myself and kind of try to have an impact on this. And how is it structured? What is the lowest level in Japan? Do you start at the city level? Do you start at the regional level?
So we would call it a municipal level, I guess. So there's a city or town, village. And then there is the regional level, which would be the prefecture. And then there is the national level, the diet. And in the diet, they have the two houses, the upper and lower house.
And you're eligible for all of them now?
Yes.
Okay.
I could technically become prime minister.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, unlikely.
Unlikely, but interesting.
Yeah.
So once you had that in mind and you had your passport, how long did it take to get the citizenship?
From the time I started working on it, I had to get all kinds of documents from Canada. So my birth certificate, the birth certificates of all of my brothers and sisters.
10 of them, right?
My parents' wedding certificate and birth certificates. So this took time.
Okay.
To gather all the documentation.
So for anyone who wants to do that, they need to plan time.
Well, okay, you have to assume it's going to take a little bit of time. So if you know that you're gonna need these documents anyway, then this is what you should do. But actually, the way to start is just to go to your local honkyoku.
Local
this
office.
Is the local. Well, it's a federal office what would you even call it? Ministry of the Interior, I think.
Okay,
would
makes
be
sense.
the technical term for it. So there'd be a branch here in Osaka as well. But pretty much any major city will have a homekyoku. So go there and just talk to somebody about what you will need, and they'll give you a pamphlet, and it will list all of the things that are required. And the reason why I say you should go get this document first is that each country is a little bit different. So, for example, Iran doesn't actually allow you to give up your citizenship. So you can write a letter saying that, yeah, I don't want to be Iranian anymore, but they don't care, right? So
you need to check for your own country.
Right, right.
And plan time, a lot of documents.
So from the time I got everything together, had all of the documents filled out, to then submitting it, from the time that the guy said, okay, now we're going to submit these documents, then it was 6 months. We had to wait for the national office to give the okay.
So the 6 months pass, you get the passport, and you come back to your idea of like, okay, I want to run for office. What was on your mind at that time? What did you want to do? Why did you want to run for office?
One of the things that I noticed about the whole drunk driving situation was that how similar it was to what happened in Canada when I was a kid. So around 1980, I was about 17, 18 years old, and they suddenly started doing the same thing. So like when I was a really small kid, like every year, the story would go around, oh, did you hear about so-and-so? He hit the ditch and rolled his car and died, and he was drunk as a skunk, right? And then in 1980, all of a sudden, the cops started busting people all the time, like checking people. And what the bars did is that they got together and they went to their local city offices and they just said, hey, we've been paying taxes, help us out, like, come on, we're dying here. And so you see the various plans. One plan which was quite successful is called designated driver, for example, and the cities would actually have a budget for the bars where they would have a one guy drive. So a group of friends would come to the bar. One guy would be designated driver, and he'd get a little button saying that he was a designated driver. And then when he went to the counter, all his soft drinks were free. And this was paid by the city initially.
Oh, that's cool.
Right. They did all kinds of PR about designated drivers, posters in the washrooms, TV commercials, these kinds of things. This was all funded by various levels of government.
I see.
Right. And so like I initially, like when the problem started with the police in Tsukuba, well, actually all of Japan, I went and talked to other bar owners and I was saying, hey, look, I've seen this story before, this is what we should be doing. This is how we should be getting some help, because if we don't do something, we're all going to die here. And they just said, nah, we're not interested,
Why that?
The standing out nail gets hit, right?
Typical.
Yeah.
In Japan, if you stand out, you get hammered down.
There you go. And they just didn't, there was no movement like in all of Japan. And, if we had done this, we'd be like the only city in all of Japan that was actually trying to do something, that I heard about. And so nobody wanted to be first, I guess. I don't know why they didn't do it. Didn't make any sense to me. But, then I started looking at other policies, and it's like there's about a 20-year time lag between some kind of policy changing in the West and then the same policy changing in Japan.
So if they legalize something in the West, 20 years later, it happens in Japan.
Or it's like same-sex marriage, for example, So you see these social trends. And like I say, it's about a 20-year time lag. So it's, in a sense, I can see the future, right? So I just look back at like, well, this is what happened 20 years ago. And like smoking in public buildings, for example. When I first started university, depending on the professor, you were allowed to smoke in the classroom. In the classroom,
wow.
right? And then suddenly the university said, yeah, can't smoke in any of the buildings. You have to go outside, you know? And this would have been about 1997. No, not 95-ish.
And
when
so
they really started cracking down on it.
2015,
yeah, something like that.
they changed it here in Japan.
And then they actually said, okay, you can't smoke in bars and restaurants, you know, and it's like this would have been in the early 2000s, and so 2020
was COVID.
2020,
kind of,
I can't remember exactly, but it's like it's about 20 years.
That's interesting.
Right? So
a theory to keep an eye on.
Well, I mean, it's not going to be 100% true, but it's quite true, actually.
The pattern works. And so you noticed this, and then you're like, okay, I've seen solutions done in other countries, and you decided that you want to try to push for those solutions to be applied here in Japan too.
That's not really how I approached it. The way I saw it is that Japan's problems aren't unique. The same problems are everywhere. Like just about every country has a drunk driving problem, for example. What I wanted to do was to present foreign solutions. And whether they were accepted in Japan or not, that really wasn't my goal to actually...
But show them.
But just to show them.
Let them know it's
you know,
there.
if you're going to do something, you know, why not look abroad? Why not see what other people have done? Like, why are we reinventing the wheel, I guess is what I was kind of asking.
So this is what you felt they were doing?
That's how
very domestic-minded and...
Yeah, and pretty much still are. But, you know, they have a term called gaiatsu, which is foreign or public or pressure, foreign pressure. You know?
Outside pressure.
Outside pressure, right. So, in fact, sometimes this is what's necessary. Other times they just like, you know, we should probably do this. Like nobody was pressuring the government to make the bars go smoke free. Nobody was pressuring, not from outside. That was something from inside.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's, again, not 100% true.
So for you to bring those ideas in front of the eyes of other elected officials and see if change happens, you need to get elected yourself first.
Sure.
So how does that work? Can you run us through the process a little bit?
So there are some criteria. First off, you have to be 25 years old or older. And you have to have, depending on the level that you are running at the city level, you had to have 300,000 yen as a deposit.
What is this money for?
It's to prevent joke candidates, I guess, or completely irrelevant candidates. So the deal is that everybody gets the money back as long as they have 10% of the last winning seat, last winning candidate. So in North America, I don't know about what's going on in Europe, but in North America, generally you have at the city level, you'll split up the city into how many constituencies, and then within each constituency, you'll run a mini election to see who is going to represent that location, that area, that constituency. And that's not what they do here. What they do here is they have like one big constituency and then however many seats are available.
Okay.
So in the bigger cities like Osaka, you probably have 3 or 4 wards, and each ward will probably elect 10 to 15 candidates, councillors. That's probably, I haven't researched Osaka. I don't know how they do that here, but
they limit it and they want to try to get people that are just there for fun out.
Right.
Doesn't always work, right? I recall there's this one guy who dresses up as a Rengoku from Kimetsu no Yaiba, the anime.
Okay.
And he's, I think, somewhere elected in some ward of Tokyo.
Could be.
But it's mostly for show, I think. I don't know how serious he is. But so you put down the 300,000, you're above 25. Is there any other condition? Clean sheet, clean record, probably?
But you don't have to prove any of those things. Like, I'm not really 100% sure, because it's not really much. You know, I think those are really the 2 main criteria. So like, I mean, you could still, I think there's nothing wrong with you being in the Yakuza, as far as I know, like, because you don't have to prove anything, right? So it's like 300,000 yen and be over 25. And I think you have to have paid your taxes. Come to think of it, yeah. Have to have paid your taxes.
And so once you meet those criteria, you have to go apply and say, I want to put my name in a ballot. And
so about a month before the election, they will have a setsumekai, explanation meeting, where they will give people the documents that they have to fill out. So there's a bunch of documents they have to fill in. And there's also a booklet on what the election laws are, what you can and cannot do during your candidacy. So, for example, one thing, you're not allowed to go around campaigning until it's actually the election campaign is actually started. Like there's a start date.
Interesting. I think it's quite similar to some other countries in the West too, no?
Yeah. So, the thing is that, people are handing out their cards, their meishi, and they will say things like, I'm thinking of running. When everybody knows, yeah, you're running. Come on, dude. What's going on?
So just plant the seed in people's mind.
Right. And, so it's okay to tell your friends, yeah, I'm going to run, but you can't go around to the public, to people you don't know. And technically, you're not supposed to put flyers in people's mail either. Except people do anyway, and they just say, oh, this is like for information purposes only, right? But in the end, it's like, yeah, I'm running. Everybody knows what's going on. So, I mean, a lot of these like, kind of moments are activities in the election process.
Once the start date...
You get everything ready, and about a week before the start date, they will have another... they will have a inspection. So you bring in all your documents, they'll go through it and they check, is this, you have everything, and if you don't, they say, oh yeah, please fill out this form, you need this or whatever. They'll look at your poster and basically give you the okay or make you redo stuff, whatever. So that on the day of, they do another inspection on that election start date, the kickoff date, but it's already been done. Everything has already been checked, right? So it goes pretty smoothly.
And then the campaign starts.
How
long is the campaign typically? So this was for city council.
So the city level, so the municipal level, it's one week of campaigning, and then the election day. So you start on a Sunday, and Saturday evening the following week at 8 o'clock you're done. You're allowed to campaign from 8 in the morning until 8 at night, not after. So these kinds of rules.
I want to talk a little bit about the campaign because I think especially for people living in Japan, they will notice mostly two things. One is people driving around in cars or standing on street corners with a lot of maybe volunteers or paid workers, I don't know, waving at you, handing out some tissue with a little bit of a note and saying names out loud.
Yeah.
So my Japanese is not perfect, but what I can understand often is they repeat the name of the candidate quite often, but not necessarily what the person stands for.
Right.
And the other thing that we see a lot are these panels with a lot of photos and a slogan for each, like a poster.
Right.
So I want to get into both a little bit, but let's start with the driving around.
Yeah.
I don't really understand the purpose of this.
Neither do I.
So I'm walking on the street, and it happened to me where I was trekking somewhere in the countryside in Shikoku, and I'm by myself, miles around, and this little K car drives by with two people waving at me. I'm like, do I look like I'm able to vote here? I mean, you certainly are now. You never know. But you never know. Never make assumptions, but...
And you might be married to someone who can, so...
But what is, like, waving at me is not going to make me interested in whatever they have to say, right? If I don't even know what this is about. So do you know how this tradition of driving around started and why people do it today? When you hear people planning their campaigns, why do they say we should put budget on that?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know.
Still a mystery.
Yeah. I don't do it.
So in your personal campaign, what do you do?
At the city level, I rode around on a bike. I had a flag with my name on it and my slogan. My slogan is Tsukuba. I love scuba. And I just stood on street corners and waved to passing cars. In the morning, I would stand in front of a research center. So I told you we have all these research centers. So I chose the biggest ones and the ones with the easiest access, whatever. And I would stand at the corner in the morning. So from around 8 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock when all the workers have arrived, I would wave to people, say hello, whatever. Sometimes people would wave back. Sometimes people just ignore me. Anyway, doesn't matter. You have a sash, right? So you've probably seen the sash as well. So that's an indication that you're a politician. So I would actually start, like I said, there were all these like kind of moments. I would have my sash with my name on it, and I would turn it inside out, and I just have like a slogan, like environment or clean energy, something like this, And people, it's not illegal to wear a sash, as long as you don't have your name on it, right?
Oh, so the sash is official.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you can't wear the sash with your name on it. You can't have a banner with your name on it. These things are all illegal until the moment from the kickoff day, right? So I would go already like a week or so beforehand, and I would hit the various institutes.
What was the initial reaction to see a foreigner campaigning?
Disbelief, like, what's he doing? Huh?
Is this for real? Is this a joke?
Yeah. Is this a joke? I mean, this is like before YouTube, right? So I know. So people would just like, what? But then they would talk to people and say, oh, did you see that guy? Like around the coffee or ocha, did you see that guy? Like, what's that all about?
So you had the power of word of mouth, actually.
Oh, indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. And gotta hand it to my blonde hair, blue eyes. Yeah, people talked. So that's what I was doing.
So you were standing in front of these research centers, meet and greet people, cycling around. Did you also go down the path of the poster?
Well, you have to. Well, you don't have to. But these poster boards that you were talking about, of course. The city pays for it.
The city pays for it?
Yeah. This is the 300,000 yen.
Okay.
Right? So the 300,000 yen would cover the cost of the posters, basically. And if you're a joke candidate, and like, so in Tsukuba, the last winning candidate gets about 2,000 votes. So if you have 150 votes, you lose the 300,000, and that covers the posters.
Okay, fair enough.
Right? And at the regional level, so the Ibaraki level, it's 600,000, and I think at the national level, it's something like $1 million or $1.5 million, something like that. So.
Are these posters impactful? Do you get, or is it just to be seen, basically? To let people know you're...
Impactful, yes. Because there are enough people who are going to vote, they will go and read these boards. So it's usually some 60, 70-year-old standing in front, and they are reading everything very closely, And so you have to imagine, again, you see all of these people's faces, and they all look very similar. That is to say, they all look Japanese, and like, whoa, what's this blonde guy doing there? Like, whoa. So how can you not read it? How can you not just go like, what's up with this?
So you really had this advantage of standing out.
Indeed.
So the nail that stood out wasn't hammered down, but was talked about, right? It was more like, we want to know more about this nail.
Yeah. And, to be blunt, I think a lot of my advantage is because I look pretty close to Bill Clinton. Like I look close enough to Bill Clinton that, when I have his book, and in his book, he has a bunch of pictures from when he was a kid. And I look at those pictures, it's like, that's me, but I don't remember being there. That's how similar, and like so when we were 20 years old.
Japanese people were making the connection, like, oh, he's...
Sure. And, personally, everybody says, oh, you look like blah, 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 and so many people have, people have just thrown out so many names. It's like, what? he's black. Like, I don't look like him. But Bill Clinton, just kept hearing this over and over and over again. And I didn't even really believe it myself so much, except when I was running my bar, some TV company came and they said, yeah, somebody said that you look a lot like Bill Clinton. And so is it okay if we come and do a little shoot? And it was like a 2-minute segment of Bill Clinton's bartending in Japan, in Tsukuba, And so I said, yeah, why not? Okay. So they took the shoot, or they did the shoot, and then they threw a picture of Clinton up there. And it was like, oh yeah, I do look like Bill Clinton. That was like the moment when it was very clear. Yeah, anyway.
And all of this led to your first election.
Yeah.
How is it on the day they poll the ballots? Is everyone together in a room? Do you just wait at home and then they call you've been elected? Or how do you find out?
So when I got elected, they had, the internet was already a thing. So this was 2008 was my first election. So they posted everything on the internet. And initially I was in a friend's bar, and we just looked on the webpage until finally my name came up, and the cutoff at that point was about 1,700 votes, and I think the first count, I'm thinking I had 1,500 already.
Okay.
When they first posted. And then they did 3 or 4 more updates, and each time it goes up. And it's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to get elected. It's like...
You made it.
Yeah.
But this is when the job really starts.
Yeah, I guess.
So once you're an elected official in Japan, does it become a full-time job? Or is it more something you do, you have duties you have to fulfill, but you can run your own day job? Or?
Right. At the municipal and at the regional level, it's okay to continue running your job. At the national level, you have to resign.
Okay.
So if you're like a shacho, if you're some kind of CEO, whatever, you have to quit because it's a full-time job. And in the end, it is a full-time job, but you're only actually required to be, at the city level, I calculated, it's about 150 hours a year that you have to actually be present.
150 hours.
Yeah.
All right.
Right. So it's not that much, but it's the same with many jobs. Do researchers ever really stop thinking about their research? No, it's a 24-hour a day kind of position. It's the same kind of idea. And I imagine, you probably go home too, and it's like, oh, you know what? Tomorrow I should do this.
Yes.
Right. So, is anything ever really just an 8-hour a day job?
So
McDonald's, I guess.
Maybe, yeah. These kind of positions.
Sure.
You are paying for manual labor, basically.
Right.
In your case, then, what were some of your duties once you were elected? What do people ask of you? What do you have to contribute to?
Duties, not so much. There were expectations, but if you didn't do any of these things, they can't fire you, right? As long as you go to the meetings, they can't fire you. And you look presentable. You have to wear a jacket, whatever. You have to wear a tie.
Suit and tie.
Yeah, what I ended up doing, to be fair, my real job was explaining government to lay people. How does government work? Because people say, oh, you're in government, we need this and we need that. And I said, oh, well, if you really need that, then this is the person you talk to. You go to this person. And sometimes it was people would ask me for, they needed a drain unblocked because, it rained and it was always a big puddle in front of their house, And so then I was like, well, I'm at the city office anyway, and I would just go say, yeah, okay, right here on the map, they are saying that this drain needs unclogging, and 2 days later somebody's there, and then I get a phone call and say, oh, John, you're amazing. And it's like, if you'd done this yourself, they would have done the same, and it's like, I'm not so amazing.
What was it that then maybe first surprised you or took you maybe off guard when you entered the world of Japanese politics? something you may have not expected? Because you went in there with the intention of bringing foreign ideas to the table and see if a Japanese group of councilmen would be interested in hearing them, engaging with them, and applying them possibly to their municipality.
The biggest surprise was how many people assumed I couldn't read. And still today, like I'm at the regional level, like it's a big deal. Mm-hmm. And they still ask me, or like they're really shocked. Oh, wow, you can read kanji? And it's like, you expect someone to be able to get elected to the regional level and be illiterate? And when you think about it, it's like, I guess it's possible. There's no test. So in principle, I guess it's possible for someone to be illiterate and still get elected. But like, how long is that going to last? I don't know. Anyway.
But how was the reception then to your foreign ideas? Going back to the issue with the drunk driving and your ideas of introducing them to a system such as the designated driver and...
So I never really got to do anything about that. At best, I asked for a night bus. Mm-hmm. Like our city isn't that big. All the bus services shut down at 10 o'clock. And it's just like, no, my bar only started getting busy at 11 at night. Not at 7, not at 8, at 11. That's when people came. So, we need a night bus. And not going to do that.
Didn't work.
In spite of the fact that many of the lines being like 97% in the red, so you can't run another bus line at night in the red. Like, why not? So, yeah. And I guess in this respect, I was a little surprised how negative the administration. So you have people think I'm the government, right, as an elected official, and that's not really what the position is. Not in Japan, and I'm kind of thinking that it's similar in the West as well. That in fact the politicians are there to provide oversight. So we're like an immune system to the real government, which would be the civil service. Okay. And so in the end, we can bring ideas to the civil service. And what will happen, like there's an official way to do this. It's called ippan shitsumon. It's question period, sort of. And every councillor at the city level is given an hour to discuss with the administration in public some ideas. And in the end, I found out it was all just a dance, all choreographed, right? So the first time that I did my ippan shitsumon, I had to have a meeting with the people and I had to tell them what I wanted. And then we had a discussion. And so they said, okay, so this is more or less what you're going to ask. And they said, yeah, that's what I'm going to ask. And then I said, okay, this is basically what we're going to say, right? So I knew beforehand what they were going to say. I knew beforehand what I was going to say, obviously, or they knew beforehand.
Basically.
So it was staged, in a sense. But it's part of the process. And the end result is that no matter how good your idea is, the initial reaction is going to be no. It's always negative.
Always.
Right? And there's a good reason for it. If you have an idea that they accept immediately, yeah, we're going to do that. That's such a great idea. Well, what happens? 6 months later, they realize, oh yeah, it's a lot harder than we thought. Now that we've actually looked into it, yeah, we can't do this.
So they don't want to say yes and kind of commit to something that they cannot guarantee after.
Right. So this is the process. They say no, they investigate, and then they implement. And cynically, then they also take all the credit. But that's not really what happens. But
do you feel that this is a system that's working well, or do you think it's, for example, perhaps slowing down a process of adapting to modern times that are kind of moving very fast?
I think you're asking the wrong person. You should ask yourself, what do you think about this system? Look around you. Look at the streets. Are they broken? Are the schools working? Is the power grid up and running? You know, are there any real problems that you have in your daily life that you think like the government should do something about?
Yeah, it's a good way to look at it. I think there is perhaps looking at it from the outside, the impression that a lot of those systems that we just talked about do not have a problem now, but some of them seem to be aging.
Sure.
And it seems like
the whole population is aging.
The whole population is aging, but with it also infrastructure.
Sure.
The trains are working smoothly, but on very old systems. For how long can this be maintained? The school buildings, for example, are working, but have an infrastructure as well that's aging. Again, I'm looking at this from the outside. So are these common points of discussion among officials? And what are seen as some of the priorities that need to be addressed?
I think you would have to talk to the mayor to really understand what is being discussed, right?
So that's interesting, because what you're implying, if I understand this correctly, is that even as an elected official, you're really only involved in one part of the governing body and of the political system, and you operate within this sphere. And then these kind of stage discussion you mentioned are for you a way to transmit information and exchange with another body that is then again going to exchange with another body. But is there any place that really regroups and puts everyone at the same table and like, let's figure this out?
When you say everyone, who do you mean? Who is everyone?
Well, you mentioned, so you were an elected councillor, city councillor, or now a prefectural councillor, and you have also the lawmakers.
Yeah.
And you have people that are, let's say, elected officials, like the mayor, civil servants. Maybe, I don't know if there's anyone else to consider, but...
Well, so I meet with all of these people on a regular basis. Generally, the councillors kind of stick together. That is to say, we don't hang so much with the governor or the mayor, right? But we do have opportunities. We're given many opportunities to talk to the buchos of the department heads. At the city level, we had a very nice system where after every session, we'd have a nice dinner. And all of the buchos, the department heads, would be there, and you could kind of talk to them about like what their ideas were, like what are the policies which are bubbling up, right? And the mayor as well, have a chance to talk to the mayor, and it's like, yeah, hey, I think this probably might be a good idea, and next time I give a speech, this is basically what I'm going to talk about. Like, how do you feel about this? And, generally it's a frank discussion, but it's off the record, right? And so, they might be a little bit more able to promise without promising, kind of.
I heard what you said, and I'll look into it, kind of.
For example, yeah.
Do you feel like a lot changed when so you've been re-elected 4 times at the city level?
At the city level, yeah.
And then you decided, okay, now it's time to go one step higher. You went to the prefectural level?
Actually, I tried once before to get to the prefectural level and lost. I did really well, but I still lost.
So the conditions to be elected in, the number of seats, for example, are more limited.
Right. So at the city level, now we have 28. When I first started, there were 33 elected officials, council members, and then they reduced to 28. And at the prefectural level, the first time I ran, there were 4 seats, and I came in 5th out of 7 people, and I missed by 600 votes, like to be number 4 even. And that really shocked a lot of people. It's like, wow, that John guy, actually, he's pretty popular, And, I was disappointed, but at the same time, especially later on, I realized, that actually was a blessing that I didn't get elected. I wasn't ready. I didn't understand the system well enough that I would have been a complete fish out of water.
So before we get into this prefectural system, is the campaigning any different?
It's just longer.
Longer. So you have more time to...
10 days instead of 7.
Okay. Not that much longer, but okay. Yeah. Because you have more ground to cover too.
No, actually, it's the same system. So I am a representative for Tsukuba City, and instead of 28, they're just 5. So they increased to 5. By the way,
I see. Okay.
So between the first election and the second election, they increased by one seat, and I came in 4th. So
I see. So the system is there are 33 representatives for Tsukuba City.
28 now.
28 for the city itself.
Yeah.
But then to represent the city at the prefectural level, they reduce it to 5.
5.
Okay.
But it's the same constituency.
I see.
It's the same, like anybody who used to vote for me for the city council can still vote for me at the prefectural level.
So it's not like you have to get votes from all of the prefectures, just you have to get votes from people within your constituency to represent them at the prefectural level.
Right.
So that new system you were about to enter, you said you were not ready for it the first time, and so it was a blessing for you not to get elected. How different is it to the city level?
So it's not that I have, I have a lot more commitments. I am a lot busier. So the number of total hours, I think now officially it's like 200 hours, perhaps maybe 250 hours a year. But like I am getting invitations to this and that committee meeting or something, every day in the mail, there's like, oh, can you come to do this, and some of it's fun. Like I got invited to a fireworks festival, front row seats.
That's nice.
With food and everything, and it was like, wow, and it was an amazing firework festival, right? So not all meetings, but a lot of meetings, and the meetings are a little bit longer than they used to be, but. Realistically, I realize now that many of the things that were happening at the city level, like we would be getting these documents called ikkensho, which was opinion papers, and we were asked to pass them.
Okay.
And in many cases, they were a letter to the prefectural governor saying, please change this policy or please implement such and such policy. And some of them were to the prime minister, so to the cabinet level, And I kept getting these, and it's like, why does anybody care? Why are we getting these things, And I realize now that actually these are a way for grassroots movements to pressure politicians at the higher levels to do something that only the higher level politicians can do. So, for example, I just gave a speech in September, and one of my points was that I want to have the prefecture force all of the convenience stores to hide their cigarettes. So this is an idea from abroad, from Canada. But it's not just Canada. Australia is doing the same thing, and other European countries are doing the same thing. It's like when you walk into the convenience store, what do you see behind the cash register? Just a wall of cigarettes, right? And what message are we sending our kids about where tobacco fits into society? We are saying, oh no, it's a legal product, and it's
very
right in view, and it's okay. And it's a kind of it's an okay to the kids. Like the message that the kids get is like, oh yeah, tobacco is something that's okay. And it's not. It really isn't. When you look at all of the negatives, I mean, I noticed you didn't smoke. You don't smoke.
No, I don't.
It's a scourge on our society. It shortens people's lives. So we're having this problem, not enough kids, and everybody is retiring. Well, if all of the people stopped smoking, they would have more working years, right? We wouldn't need so much imported labor, for example, because people would be healthy longer, right? You have a heart attack, and all of a sudden, farming really isn't going to be possible because you had a heart attack, or a stroke even. Like a stroke requires that you have a nurse come in. Like you're actually taking resources from the society, right? Anyway, I'm not going to get on my stump about cigarettes.
But you made that speech.
I made the speech, and I realize now that it's like of course the administration said, no, we're not going to do this. That's not what they said, actually. What they said is that, oh, look at all the things that we are doing to stop people from smoking. And only 3% of people started smoking because they saw the cigarettes behind the counter. That's what the administration said. And if I want to get this passed, one way would be for me to have these ikensho, these opinion documents, passed in many of the other councils, the city councils, so at the municipal level. If all of the municipal councils pass this document saying that we should hide the cigarettes, I mean, what's the governor going to do? I mean, not the governor so much, but like the Ministry of Health or whoever is in charge of making such a decision. That's going to be a lot of pressure. Like if 70, 80% of the population is saying we should be hiding cigarettes, right? What are they supposed to do? I mean, they can't just ignore that. So I didn't understand that 8 years ago.
And you do now?
Now I do. And that's what I actually came to realize after I got elected at the prefectural level.
So now you basically have a better understanding of how and where to apply pressure if you want to sway the public opinion, which ultimately is what's supposed...
Not the public opinion, the political opinion.
Political opinion.
Yeah.
You mentioned some of the meetings, which
yes.
Can be longer than they need. The typical image we have of Japanese meetings may be, as you said, long, stretched out, and a strong need to reach a common agreement that... expressing strong opinions, debating fiercely an idea is not so much part of it. How?
That's not really what goes on in the meetings so much. Mostly it's reports. So they are saying we spent this much money on this project and money over here. We had these kinds of situations where bullying in the schools, for example. We had these many cases. That's what the meetings mostly are.
So it's mostly sharing information.
Right.
Wouldn't it be more efficient than to just make a report and share it instead of spending a lot of time just having one person vocally share it?
Well, so they do publish it and they send it beforehand, so we read it. So when they do make their report, if there is a situation that someone is interested in, they will bring it up and say, okay, you mentioned this many bullying cases, so why don't you do this, or is it possible to do that? So this is what's going on already, right? So they're creating a situation where people can question the government. So like I said, my job is oversight, or politicians' job is oversight. The real heavy lifting is done by the civil service.
Now you've been involved in the political sphere for quite a few years. Have you noticed a change in trends of what is important? Now you were arguing, or not arguing, kind of pushing for something to be done about cigarettes. Are there any common themes that come up regularly in the discussions? So
renewable energy is becoming big. There is something called SDGs.
Yeah, the famous SDGs.
Yeah, SDGs. So these are topics which come up quite a lot. At the prefectural level, the topics are a little bit different because each level of government has their own. It's called a bailiwick. Their hatake, their fields, right? And so, for example, at the city level, the elementary and junior high school is covered at the city level, but high school is covered at the prefectural level, and university at the national level. So the meetings that I am attending, the topics are a little bit different because they cover just things that the prefecture covers. They don't cover what goes on at the city level anymore.
Is there a lot of cooperation between prefectures, within Japan, or are you really operating within Ibaraki?
It is more that the cooperation is between the prefectures and the national government and the cities. So inter-prefecture happens a little bit, especially when it comes to things like rivers.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, because a river goes through a couple of different prefectures. So, if one prefecture were to suddenly use all the water, what do the prefectures down the river do? So you kind of have to have like agreements between prefectures. A little bit roads, but really not so much even the roads,
And so I imagine that you have had some very challenging times too. It's a very demanding job. How do you manage to kind of balance now being in this political sphere? As you said, you don't just clock off and forget about what you're working on, with also your now personal life, since you have 3 kids you mentioned earlier, and that's also kind of very demanding, perhaps.
I suppose.
Yeah.
In the end, kids kind of just grow up, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you think about your own childhood, your parents told you stuff and you just did what you wanted anyway, right? Mostly.
Yeah.
Yeah. They kind of raise themselves in a sense, And they, you're just kind of a guide as a parent, kind of showing them the way. But if you start to, whip them into place, so to speak, that's not a good way to raise kids.
So it's been a natural process for you to kind of go into politics and keep your family life as well. And
it's fine. It's fine. And in fact, I would even say that the impact was more on my kids, because like suddenly their father is, this big wig. I don't think so, but the other kids don't know that, so yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for you personally, are there things that you'd like to see develop in the next coming years in the political sphere, like decisions to be made that you think would be important to go for?
The easy answer is that if we do not get a handle on global warming, we're all screwed. Mm-hmm. I don't care about the aging society of Japan. If the temperature goes to 45 degrees in summertime, we're screwed, So in this respect, there is only one topic that matters. Everything else is just secondary, So, of course, you have to work on the assumption that we are going to get a handle on the global warming issue. Personally, I doubt it. Humanity is just too stupid, I'm too stupid. Right.
It's a very complex problem to kind of try to figure out on your own, and too many uncontrollable elements as well, perhaps.
Yeah. You just have to understand what a hypocrite we all are. Oh, global warming. And then I fly home to see my parents. Come on. Right. If we're really going to get a handle on global warming, this is going to require commitments that I don't know anybody who wants to make it at this point. In the end, it's just going to happen, because society is going to collapse, and that's the end of it, So I'm kind of
cynical.
I see a very dark
future.
Yeah,
dark future. Yet you're working for a bright one. And do you feel like being involved, becoming a Japanese citizen, getting involved into Japanese politics, has changed your perspective on the country and its people from when you first arrived?
I don't know that it really matters whether I became a politician. I would have changed my ideas anyway, right? So it's just part of being here and looking around and seeing the way things work and trying to understand what's going on in the background. What are the driving forces of society. So I don't think that being a politician is really a requirement for that.
But it may have given you interesting insights into what goes on behind closed doors for many people, and brings up a lot of questions in public discourse and in the media. And, is there anything about the kind of organization structure and your personal journey through the political sphere that we haven't really discussed that you think would be very interesting to bring up today?
So, citizenship is something which fascinates me. We don't allow dual citizenship in Japan.
No.
And there was a time when I really thought it was important. But with what's going on in the world right now, I really am questioning this, like whether Japan actually has got it right, that if you're going to be Japanese, you can't be something else, right? So just to bring up Israel, I watch the Canadian news every now and again, and so they are reporting that there are Canadians who were killed by Hamas. And I'm like, well, what were they doing there? Well, they were serving in the military. Like they were at a party, but it was like, their day off from their military service. And it's like, what do you mean? What are you doing in the Israeli military? Right? Are you Canadian? If you're Canadian, then be Canadian. We don't have mandatory military service, just as an example.
So the concept of citizenship, what does it mean to basically hold a passport?
Right. Right. So like I say, I'm really questioning now whether dual citizenship is something, even though it is quite common. Like, plant your flag. If you're going to stay in Japan and you want to come back, because one of the things that the passport grants you is the right to return, the right to come home. Where's your home? Decide. And if you can't decide, then it's fine. Stay here for as long as you like. Enjoy yourself, right? And when you're ready, get your citizenship.
Yeah, that's an interesting take.
Sure.
For how much longer are you currently in your elected period?
So at the city level and the prefectural level, it's 4 years.
And is in your
and
remaining...
I am now 10 months in. I got elected December 22nd.
So you still have a good 3 years.
December 12th, something like that.
3 years before the next election.
Yeah, 3 years and a bit.
What will be your goal in those next 3 years? Something you'd like to achieve?
Goals, hey. Well, okay, yeah, I really would like the prefecture to mandate that the cigarettes are not displayed. However, I have a friend who's like really heavy into the anti-smoking movement, and he's a lawyer. And one of the things that he said is, go ahead and do all this, right? And then it's going to go to the Supreme Court. So it's even if you get the commitment by the administration to hide the cigarettes, don't expect this to actually be implemented for at least 3, 4, or 5 years. So after, who knows, I might even be dead by that time before
let's hope not.
Let's
hope you
never
get
know,
to,
right?
But thank you very much, John. I think you've given us a very interesting insight into political life in Japan and how complicated it is, but also how some of the aspects of it work very well. Some of the aspects are complex and take time. As the latest example, you can push for something to be accepted and brought forward, but then there's still another governing body that has a final say. So whatever we see in the media perhaps, or we read online, maybe it's interesting to take it with a grain of salt and think about what is being done and what is actually happening for this change. And your contribution today really helped, I think, to get a better understanding.
If you really want to understand the media, understand that the media will never criticize an advertiser in their publication, right? So if Toyota is spending a lot of money on ads, you'll never see a critical piece about Toyota, for example, right? So who's paying? And there is a phrase, qui benit. This is the Latin for who benefits. So when you see these stories, ask yourself, who benefits? And that will kind of help you understand what's really going on.
I think that's a good take on it. Thank you again, John, for coming all the way from Ibaraki. Thank you.
So before we
go,
I am hoping that there will be some foreigners living in Japan here who take the idea that it is not just possible, it's I don't want to say easy, but become a politician, get involved. It's a good thing. It's a good thing to have foreign voices, foreign-born voices, let's put it that way, So I hope that there are people who watch this and think, oh, gee, yeah, maybe I could do that. I mean, John's a dumbass. If he can do it, maybe I can,
Well, you've certainly shown us how to do it and which steps to go through.
Sure.
So we have the playbook,
Sure.
and we know it's possible. So I think hopefully some listeners, some viewers will be inspired by this discussion we had.
Sure. And if people are interested in learning how to do this, I've written a blog post. Please put it in the...
We'll put it in the description so everyone can
description.
access it and have the kind of process written down.
Right.
On,
so I've written 2 pieces. One is how to get elected, and 2 is what I actually do. So I hope that they will read that.
Thank you for that as well. Thank you for our listeners this week. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. This was Unpacking Japan. We'll see you again next week. Bye.